Hello, my name is Kai and welcome to the Theoretical YouTube channel, where today we are continuing our series of videos all about movie trailers. So far we've had what makes trailers work and are trailer shots okay, and today we're going over a brief history of movie trailers. But you might think, what is there to go over in the history of movie trailers? Do they really have that much exciting stuff going for them? Well, not really. For the most part, they've always been what they are today. Advertisements for movies coming out. But we all know that even if that's technically what a movie trailer is, there's so much more that goes into it. Link to a video about exactly what goes into it. There is a sort of science to making movie trailers, and just like science, it has taken years of discovery to know what we know today. So how did we go from this to this? Well, today we find out. Ever since the dawn of filmmaking, advertisement has played a key role. In fact, since visual storytelling itself became popular many years ago, people had to advertise it. How would people know that you're putting on a play, musical, puppet show, whatever, if you didn't tell them about it? A long time ago, this took the form of paying children to yell about it in the street, handing out pamphlets, or buying an ad in the newspaper. And while these practices are still quite common today, a new form of advertisement was on the rise. Around the turn of the century, short films were starting to become very popular. But since no one had their own projector or screen at home, they had to go somewhere to view these pictures. And thus the theater was born, a place where filmmakers could display their art and where the public could view it. However, as movies became increasingly popular, the demand started to outweigh the supply. There just weren't enough people in the filmmaking industry making movies. The solution the theaters came up with was to show short films interwoven with commercials for local businesses, big companies, or even, war propaganda. This way, the movie-going experience was longer for the fans, and thus more like the event we have today when we go to the theater, instead of just a cheap 15-minute show. Now the theaters also had more supply to counteract the demand, and they were making some extra money from the advertisers paying them. And this is just how movies worked for about 20 years, until filmmakers realized that they were missing out on a huge opportunity. What better way is there to advertise your new movie to those who will actually go out and see it, than to play it in a commercial in the theater? One of the earliest trailers was a short promotional reel produced by Nils Granlund, the advertising manager for the Marcus Loew theater chain. The ad was for a musical production of The Pleasure Seekers, which opened in the Winter Garden Theater on Broadway in 1913. Loew said in the future that promotional material like this would be replacing most of the advertising in his theaters. This was advertised as an entirely new and unique stunt. But about a year earlier, something played after a serial called The Adventures of Kathleen. But what made it particularly special was what it did at the end of the episodes. At the end of each installment, Kathleen and the other characters would often find themselves in a dangerous situation, what we would call today a cliffhanger. The story goes that at the end of one of the episodes, Kathleen is thrown into a lion's den. Ooh, scary. And then it cuts to a piece of film that says, "Does she escape the lion's pit? See next week's thrilling installment." To us today, this seems like a pretty typical ending to an episode with a cliffhanger, but to them, this was revolutionary. This is also where trailers got their name. Since the piece advertising the next installment came at the end of the episode, it was said that it would trail the episode. Thus, it was a trailer. And this tradition of playing trailers at the end of films actually continued for decades, until the theaters realized that audiences would just get up and leave once the movie was over. Kind of like those leaving before the credits are done nowadays. It really shows who we care about more, those making the movie or those paying for it. So now that the ball was rolling, there was no stopping it. Loew got Granlund working on many more trailers, until he was working with people like Charlie Chaplin. But sadly, in 1919, Granlund's revolutionary idea was snatched up by a big corporation called the National Screen Service, who then had a monopoly on the production and distribution of movie trailers for 40 years. But over the next century, movie trailers continued to evolve alongside the film industry itself. During the silent film era, they mostly utilized text on screen and stunts and action to get the audience's attention. Then with the trailer for The Jazz Singer, the first talkie, the trailer was a 7-minute long preview advertising that this movie had sound, and it did it through narration.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am privileged to say a few words to you in this most modern and novel manner. Privileged because it's the first living Vitaphone announcement ever made announcing the coming of one of the year's outstanding pictures.
So really the first film with talking in it wasn't The Jazz Singer, it was the trailer for The Jazz Singer. But while movies were being revolutionized with the addition of sound, it was also around this time that the trailers started to get a bit boring. You see, the National Screen Service was making deals with every major studio to make their trailers for them, and since they were making so many trailers, they had to come up with a system to output as many as possible. Basically, every NSS trailer had the same 4 components. Text on the screen telling you to watch the movie, narration telling you about the movie, music to inspire the right types of feelings for the movie, and all throughout with a series of clips from the movie. So you can see how it started to get boring watching the same thing every trailer. But this is where the story of the NSS gets good. The NSS isn't just the villain of this story because they're the man trying to make money off of the art form without really appreciating it. While that may be true, it wasn't enough to bring them to court. Yeah, that happened. The National Screen Service was actually pretty much an evil corporation using its monopoly to abuse others in the film industry, and so the government stepped in. From the late 40s to the early 50s, the NSS was accused of monopolizing, conspiring, and even sabotaging those who stood against them, and because of this, in 1955 they were brought in front of a judge. Injunctions were issued against them, and as they fought the legal battles that followed, they lost many of their exclusive contracts, and the trailer market was free. Now, because they had dominated the trailer format for so long, many trailers continued with the typical format even after the NSS had fallen. But others, like Alfred Hitchcock, were completely changing the game when it came to trailers. The trailer for Psycho was a 6-minute short story told through clips from the movie where he would almost give away the scene, but then cut away just before the revelation. He liked doing this so much, he did it again in The Birds. Stanley Kubrick defied all precedent when it came to the trailer for Dr. Strangelove, or I'm not saying the whole name, when he decided to cut it together himself. This amount of creative control from directors like Hitchcock and Kubrick would have been impossible in the days of the NSS. But just as they were getting the hang of it, the film industry was changing again. It was the 70s, and people had basically had so much war that they were tired of thinking. Thus we issue in the age of the blockbuster. Films like Jaws, Star Wars, or Alien were huge hits, and their trailers actually reflect a time before. The main draw of these movies was action. You bought a ticket to Jaws to see a shark swallow a torpedo, just like how you'd buy a ticket to Modern Times to see Charlie Chaplin almost die. And so a lot of the trailers from this time were much like those from the silent era. They used a lot of action and text on the screen, but now they had the ability to narrate or have characters like talk if they wanted to. And with that, we're led into the trailers of the modern era. Maybe in 20 or 30 years, we'll look back at the trailers we see today and see a trend in all of them. But what I see when I look at all of the trailers today is a perfect mix of all of the strategies from before. Nowadays, we have the prominently displayed stunts and action from the silent era, as well as the heavy narrative storytelling from the post-NSS era. While I do think that the trailers we're releasing now are some of the best we ever have, we are still trying new things and learning from them. For instance, a recent trend that has come about from YouTube of all things is a sort of pre-trailer trailer. On YouTube, there are 2 types of ads, skippable ads and non-skippable ads, and the maximum length from what I've seen of a non-skippable ad is 15 seconds, much too short to fit an entire trailer. So what movie companies have actually been doing recently is putting 3 to 5 second snippets of the best parts of the trailer before the trailer actually plays, so that they can convince you to watch the entire thing before the skip button appears. It's a little piece of psychology that simultaneously makes you love and hate the film industry even more than you already did. But will this stick around in trailers to come? Who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But that's all I have today. Like in a lot of our brief histories, this one is just the surface. If you look into the full history of trailers, there's a lot more smaller eras where you just have certain things that were popular for a little bit, and then there's a lot of money involved because obviously this is an advertising tactic. But I just stuck to the main trends and also some of the drama. But anyway, if you liked this video, like it. If you want to subscribe, do that. And if you want to comment something you think is cool about the history of movie trailers, something you thought was cool that I said, or anything really, then you can do that in the comment section down there. We have a Twitter. Follow it at theory_central if you want a reminder of when the next video goes up. This is the third of 4 videos, all revolving around movie trailers. The next one will be our top 10 movie trailers. But it looks like that's all I have to say, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.
Intervention!